Hey guys, we're gonna do a list now, and it's gonna be fun because it's a list, and the internet, don't even know if you know about this, the internet loves lists, and that's what we're gonna be doing today is list. It's in the title, I think you should know that already. I don't know how to introduce a list. Back in 2019, Vinegar Syndrome, everybody's favorite boutique Blu-ray label, as we've already discussed, they started a brand new line within their line, and that was the Vinegar Syndrome Archive releases. Now, Vinegar Syndrome Archive started back in, again, 2019, was put together as a method of showing off sort of these cinematic oddities from the video store era. And that they certainly have done. These are movies that had pretty limited theatrical release overall, didn't really make a huge splash, and you might have picked up in the video store at some point back in the 80s or 90s. They are small fish in the grand scheme of things. They are tiny, exploitative, weird movies. In some cases, they have a pretty big cult following. They showed up on TV on a regular basis. All kinds of different stories, all kinds of different audiences, some with no audience at all. It's a whole smorgasbord of films. But the main thing that kind of keeps them apart from the rest of the Vinegar Syndrome lineup is they are only sold either directly through Vinegar Syndrome's website or through brick and mortar stores. No online retailers sell these. It's only brick and mortar stores and the website itself. Beyond that, they also have cool covers. As you can see, here's Dr. Jekyll's Dungeons of Death. They have these really cool, really hard slipcovers that are meant to evoke the video store era. They fit a little weird when you're putting it back on. It's very easy to kind of catch the plastic there and accidentally, fuck something up. I've had at least one of these releases. I think it might have been Vice Academy. I tore into the innards a little bit. So, not the best design in the world, but they are pretty cool. And it's just really nifty to just, slide this thing out and begrudgingly put it back on. It's just, it's one of their many cool eccentricities as a company that I really enjoy. And so we're going to be talking about them. I was going to make just a general review of LA Wars and this one, Dr. Jekyll's Dungeon of Death. But then I realized that since there's so few of them, I could just talk about all of them. Fuck it. Why not, right? So today I'm going to go over, give brief reviews, and rank every VSA release. Let's dig in, starting at number 7. It's this one. It's Dr. Jekyll's Dungeon of Death. The great-grandson of Dr. Jekyll makes people injected with his forebear's famous serum fight Mandingo style, and also lusts after the comatose daughter of his dipshit rival. Also, he's got a mentally challenged manservant whose identity is a twist that will truly make you go, huh. Although the nefarious Dr. Jekyll fails to perfect his serum, he does successfully build an excitement vacuum capable of putting even the most focused of viewers straight to sleep. Riveting stuff. This thing's so weird. It is basically a vanity project gone wrong. It feels very much like a porno director trying to make a horror film, which it is. James Wood was a porno director, and James Mathers, who wrote the script, is the lead actor, and he has a lot of monologues, and that's kind of what the movie is. It's a lot of monologues and a lot of long, drawn-out bodies slapping against each other, in this case, fighting, but still just these long, drawn-out scenes, then kind of glued together by monologues and cheap bullshit while various characters walk around a house and be dicks.
Oh, you'll see her all right, Atkinson. But it won't be quite what you expect. Hilda, brandy, and ice.
I was actually excited to see during the opening title that this was a Nevada production. I was like, oh, cool, all right, cool. I always like to see the state I live in it represented on film. But fuck me, right? It all takes place inside the same shitty house with the same shitty amount of lights, which I believe is one. It's dark as fuck throughout the entire movie. Even with this stellar transfer, barely could keep up with what was going on. Not just because of the lighting. Sometimes the lighting's fine. I also couldn't keep up with what was going on because I failed to care. I was being put to sleep basically from the word go. It is an excruciatingly boring film. There's also a lot of rape and racism, which could have been social satire. There is a potential for that. I can see how it could have been satire, but it doesn't work. It's very poorly written, to the point that I question the morals of the people in charge. And fight scenes are really only as good as the characters involved. Obviously, you can get away with some really stellar choreography. That's basically what most Asian action cinema is, just amazing choreography. Whether the characters are good or not, you usually go in and go, that's some good fight scenes. With Dr. Jekyll's Dungeon of Death, they're fine. I mean, they're good fights. Like, they feel very raw. They feel like they have a lot of power behind them. They're not just like slap fights. You can tell that they actually practiced and tried really hard to get the fights right, but it's just really long, really drawn out, and I don't care about who's fighting. And they're not fancy fights, they're not fights that make you go, oh, wow, this is really stellar to look at. It's like they're dancing, blah, 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 blah. It's just shitty fights. And so, it turns out even I have taste, and this movie sucks. As far as extras go, we get a promotional stills gallery and a trailer. So, yeah. There are 3,000 of these. At number 6, we've got Vice Academy 1 through 3. Now, whether or not I like I'll say it. I do like these better than Dr. Jekyll. Absolutely, 100%. These are more fun. There are a few laughs sprinkled in. They are well lit. Rick Sloan, I mentioned this in my actual Vice Academy review. Rick Sloan, pretty good at lighting, pretty good at getting the most out of a location. But, I fucking can't stand these movies. I also appreciate that it has a fan base. This is a series of films with actual staunch fans who remember watching it on Up All Night and just having a blast and it being a big part of their childhood, and I guess jerking it to Ginger Lynn and Linnea Quigley, which is great. I appreciate that. I respect jerking it to these ladies. I get it, man. It was the early 90s. You needed something. This was on cable. Go for it. And they look great. They certainly try, but I just couldn't get into it. I'm not going to get too far into Vice Academy because I have an entire review that is linked below. You can watch my full review. But the long and short of it is, I don't think it's a very good franchise. I think it's Rick Sloan's potentially weakest effort. I still, to this day, have not watched Blood Theater in its entirety, so that's still to be determined. I think Hobgoblins is a heck of a lot of fun. I just don't like Vice Academy. But these also, they have full in-depth commentaries. They have interviews. Like, they have actual special features where Dungeon of Death has basically nothing. So, as a package, honestly, this is one of the best packages in the VSA lineup. I would say it's definitely the best extra rich, like, bang for your buck, if you enjoy these movies, release in the VSA lineup. So in that way, it's great. But for me, the movies are so bad that they drag all those extras down and just make it kind of worthless. But if if you enjoy these, fucking great release. But for me, number 6.
Stop making these tapes.
At number 5, Evil Town. Ooh, Evil Town, the one that I freaked out over not being able to get and then got it, and it's the Dashed edition. So Evil Town, we're getting into, maybe it's good, I don't know, territory here. Evil Town is not as bad as people say. It is certainly a movie. It is certainly an amalgamation of parts. Let's get into the plot.
Now that's not a bad idea.
So once you break down its many characters and plot threads, Evil Town is pretty simple. A few youngins from LA are driving through the country when their car breaks down in Small Town, population 666, elevation 13 feet. Oh boy. These kids, including young James Keach and Star Trek brat villain Robert Walker Jr., wind up staying in town a little longer than anticipated due to the extent of their car troubles, and quickly become acquainted with the many, many, many elderly folks who live in Small Town. Turns out they are all in on a scheme formulated by a local doctor named Schaefer, played by veteran actor Dean Jagger, to suck the essence out of the youth in order to keep them all alive, potentially forever. Ooh. Also, there's evil mechanics and rape and a girl that can do weird things with her feet. Goddamn. And here's the thing, that plot summary actually sounds pretty interesting. It has sort of a dead and buried vibe to it, and it seems like it could be a potentially pretty good movie. And maybe it was, back when it was called Goddamn Dr. Shaggets, or God Bless Grandma and Grandpa, or whatever the fuck the title was, before it was recycled into Evil Town in the mid-'80s. Oh boy.
They look healthy, their vital signs are excellent. They should make exceptional donors.
There's a lot of confusion surrounding the making of Evil Town. Basically, it takes a fairly smart, low-budget horror flick from the late 70s and splices in a bunch of new footage circa 1985, including some very, very out-of-place nudity from July 1982 Playmate of the Month, Linda Weissmeyer. Just to add even more confusion, much of the footage was shot and inserted by Marty Rustum, who, around the same time, decided to make his own version of the story, but this time with aliens instead of the elderly, thereby completely missing the point of the movie that he decided to butcher. This film would become Evils of the Night, which was also released by Vinegar Syndrome. Also, the Millennium Falcon is on the cover, and I don't know. There's actually a really good blog post that I'll link to below because I don't remember the name offhand. But it's a really good blog post that kind of delves into the making of the movie a little bit more. It's not entirely accurate based on what I found out on this disc, but it goes into a bit more than the disc does and gives you a better understanding of just how fucking weird this production history really was. Also, bonus fun fact, Marty Rustum was an executive producer on such Al Adamson classics as Dracula vs. Frankenstein, The Female Bunch, and the lost film Lash of Lust. He also wrote and produced Tobe Hooper's Eaten Alive, and he produced two other Vinegar Syndrome releases, Psychic Killer and Savage Harbor. This guy was a king of sleaze. So the Blu-ray itself is kind of disappointing. It's it's a great transfer, obviously, they always are, but it feels a little slight. There's a comparison between Evil Town and Evils of the Night, which is fairly interesting, although if you watch the two movies, you'll see the comparisons anyway, so I don't really, unless you don't own Evils of the Night, it's not really terribly useful. And then we also get an interview with director Larry Spiegel, who was one of the 3 credited directors on the movie, although technically we have, I guess, 4 directors. And it's a good interview. I like it. It helped me learn more about the film, and between that and the blog post I mentioned, I know way too much about Evil Town now. But it's one of the, I don't know what it is about Vinegar Syndrome doing this, but especially on these VSA releases, there's a lot of these audio interviews that have nothing going on visually. And I find that a little annoying just because the interviews tend to be kind of iffy audio quality wise. It's usually one person on the phone. And so you get that kind of natural kind of staticky phone sound, which is kind of potato quality. And then the visual that we get with this is generally just basically a blank screen. It's usually a still from the movie with just the words audio interview with such and such. And then you have the audio interview, and it's like 30 minutes long usually, which that's the case here. And it's cool, and it's nice that I can just listen to a thing in the background. But if you're going to put together this fancy packaging, I don't see why you can't just edit in a little like clip show or something. Even if it's just like various, promo stills and like stills from the film or whatever. It would just be a little bit more visually exciting, for when you actually are, if you're watching on your TV, which most people will be doing. It's a little thing that bothers me, that's all. Anyway, Evil Town is in that kind of Night Train to Terror, Fiend with the electronic brain type film where the filmmakers took an old pre-existing movie, re-edited it, added new footage, and put it out as a new thing. And those two that I mentioned, plus so many more, are really entertaining, especially Night Train to Terror. Night Train to Terror is my fucking shit, yo. Check out my review, dog. But the Evil Town just fumbles a little too much for me. It's kind of boring in a lot of places. It's not necessarily terrible, and it does have redeeming qualities. It does have some interesting moments. I would say Evils of the Night is, oddly enough, even though it's a ripoff of Evil Town, Evils of the Night is a more entertaining movie just because it's so gleefully bizarre, whereas this one has an interesting 70s film that is completely butchered by all the additional footage. So, I don't know. Also, Dean Jagger had a stroke a few years before this, and it's very obvious, so it's really awkward to watch his performance. Yeah. I don't know.
I've seen rabbits who associate less than you.
At number 4, Jesus Christ, Hellriders. I know there's one guy watching this who's like, you son of a bitch, stop throwing those movies around. And I'm not gonna. Not gonna. It's my property. Not gonna. Not gonna. Not gonna. Not gonna. Whee! Not gonna. Oh, fuck, I'm dizzy. Oh, shit. So anyway, I reviewed Hellriders back in my, what is it? March 2020. I reviewed it back in my March 2020 video. So if you want to see my full review, you can watch that video. But the point is, I did not particularly like Hellriders. I might actually have enjoyed Evil Town slightly more, but I'm ranking this higher for a couple reasons. One, I do think this is a legitimate party movie. I mentioned it in that review that this is a movie that really works better with friends. I think, it has like a sort of ratio of the more friends, the better time you're going to have quality. And I think that's perfectly fine. I think that, if a movie has a certain approach to its viewing that'll make it better, cool. That's great. That's awesome. It doesn't make the movie bad per se, even though this one is bad. But it shows that entertainment can be had, and that is definitely the case. Hellriders is certainly entertaining, mostly because of its flaws, but I'll take that over, boring, bland bullshit like Vice Academy. I fucking said it, and I'll say it again.
I'd say you were a $200 hooker.
And where Evil Town is very confusing and kind of jumbled. At times it's slow, at times it's fun, but always a little bit of a what the fuck is going on. Hellriders is a very simple plot done with a lot of love, but also very poorly. And so if you really enjoyed that kind of movie, it's super entertaining, whereas I really don't know anyone who actively searches out a movie like Evil Town, if that makes any sense. If you're not already aware, the film follows an ex-prostitute played by Ginger from Gilligan's Island who's accosted by bikers and takes refuge in a nearby small town that's definitely not just a film set located outside of Santa Clarita. There she is helped by the irresistibly charming Dr. Batman, who helps her and the locals combat the villainous motorcycle gang. Hilarity and stunt doubles ensue.
We're the Hell Riders. Letting these jerks ride along with us was stupid.
As far as extras on this, we have a slight upgrade from the previous one. We do get a stills gallery, which, whatever. But also we get a video interview with director James Bryan, who seems really fun and charming and sweet. And honestly, watching that interview made me wish I liked the movie more. But, again, it's a party movie. I'll take it. Not the worst, not the best. It's Hellriders. And you know what? Speaking of interviews, this interview has nothing on our next film, Savage Harbor. Oh, what a glorious piece of shit this is. Savage Harbor may actually be worse than the last two on this list, just by virtue of being totally incompetent. But the lack of quality makes it easily the most hilarious of the bad films in the VSA catalog. I mean, just look at this ridiculous cover art. It is completely inept. First off, this is taken from the poster, which, let's see. If we open this sucker up, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Ugh. I'm actually going to keep this out. I'm going to hang it up on my wall after we're done. All right, so if you look at the poster, I don't know if you can see that, but so it's Frank Stallone, Chris Mitchum, Savage Harbor, and let's see, alone they're dangerous, together they're awesome. And you got this little lady running. And it suggests that we're going to get this like intense action movie starring the brother and son, respectively, of Sylvester Stallone and Robert Mitchum. And we don't get that. We don't get that at all. No, sir. It is technically an action movie because action does happen. But that's really selling it a little strong. Savage Harbor is a bad movie. It's the long and short of it. It's a bad movie. It's one of the worst made other than of this lineup. Let's see. Yeah, I'd say it's probably the worst made other than Dr. Jekyll out of this lineup. It's so delightfully off the wall dumb that I can't help but really like it. What Savage Harbor is actually about is the story of two longshoremen played by Frank Stallone and Christopher Mitchum as they seek love and entertainment while on shore leave. Mitchum basically just hangs out at the same bar while seducing Wednesday Addams, and Stallone, bless him, falls in love with a hooker who he saves from the rapey driver, who in turn picked her up and saved her from her murderous pimp. You following me? Anyway, he promises to marry her when he returns from his next voyage, but wouldn't you know it, that Ioshan scamp Bella Oxmix, being a gangster to the core that he is, finds her and gets her hooked on heroin. Re-enter our heroes, and Stallone is on the case, sometimes even getting help from Mitchum when the film remembers what it's trying to sell us. What is there to say about this movie, other than that it's not good? It's sometimes kind of dull, but when it's on, when it's like truly at its dumbest, it is worth its weight in gold. Frank Stallone very obviously does not give a fuck throughout this entire film. He is an openly hostile actor, and that is not more apparent than in the disc's lone video interview. Just watch it.
It was really Ed Wood. It was, no, actually, Ed Wood was better.
Whole interview, just like that. Just Stallone just dropping a lack of fuck everywhere he does go, and it is fucking love it so much. The dude is a total savage, and for me, this is the best interview I've ever watched on a Vinegar Syndrome release. It is not necessarily the most informative, but it is by far the most entertaining. So good. And honestly, once you've watched the interview, it makes the final product so much more hilarious. I think the next time I watch this movie, I will have a much better time than I did the first time. That is how special this lone extra really is.
Do you like avocados?
Outside of that amazing extra, we do get one more audio interview. Just like the other ones, it's kind of lame. It doesn't actually show anything. It's just blank screen and audio interview, basically, with the cinematographer. It's good. It's not an amazing interview, but it is a perfectly good interview. It gives us a little bit more information on the production, plus a really funny story about Chris Mitchum and the director kind of going at it, and gives us probably the only good, where Frank Stallone is very mean towards the director, this guy is very much the guy's friend and gives us a different viewpoint, so that's good. And I always like hearing from the cinematographer on these things, but again, I don't particularly love these audio interviews just because they could use just a bit more effort, is all I'm saying. And actually, speaking of effort, number 2, LA Wars. LA Wars tells the heartwarming story of a cop who doesn't play by the rules, infiltrating a criminal empire so that he can stop an escalating war between two criminal organizations. But he didn't plan on falling in love.
But beating a suspect to death never has been and never will be part of this department's policy. You know that!
Ugh, that's not good. So, I would best describe this whole film as definitely trying. Everyone who is involved in this movie tries really hard. The actors specifically try really hard. They do their damnedest, and it doesn't always work.
Soon it will be Raul Guzman who controls the City of Angels.
But it is, at very least, always charming. Again, I'm not saying that anyone necessarily succeeds in their endeavors, but there's energy to how the stock, paper-thin characters are portrayed. They're treating this like it's The Godfather, when in reality it's closer to the cinematic heights of the Scarface video game. This is not an amazing-looking film. It's shot on 16mm, and the elements aren't pristine, but it's more than watchable. The fact that it's jam-packed with action set pieces and some pretty solid cinematography really helps. Now, since this is a new title, let's go ahead and break down the extras real quick. Starting a War is a 17-minute interview with director Tony Conda. The best 80s trash seems to be foreigners, usually from the Middle East, trying their hand at their interpretations of Americana. Just think of The Apple as like the perfect example of that, and that seems to be the case here. Tony's love of making movies is really infectious and shows where all that pure wild energy in the final product comes from, and he gives us a lot of info about the making of the film, and it's one of those interviews that it makes you feel like you want to go make a movie. And that's usually my preferred type of interview, at least when it's not Frank Stallone shitting on a man's chest. Shoot First is a 23-minute interview with cinematographer Mark Morris, who also did a lot with famed B-grade master Andy Sedaris. As already noted, I love hearing from cinematographers, and I love it even more when I can see them too. After that, we get 2 audio interviews. Oh joy. One is with star Vince Bardacco, conducted over the phone by Brad Henderson. As usual, this is just a single still with accompanying audio, with one, in this case Vince, being a little poor quality due to the whole phone thing. If that's a big issue, there are subtitles. Brad's a pretty good interviewer. He does a solid job getting the most out of his subject, so it's a solid 20 minutes of info. The other interview, also conducted by Brad, is an 18-minute interview with Rodrigo Auberjohn, who's one of the crime bosses in LA Wars. It's a solid interview that gives us a better idea of the man behind the character, with my usual criticisms applying to this one as well, of course. Beyond that, we get about 2 minutes worth of behind-the-scenes stills and promo material, plus a trailer. So that's it. Overall, pretty solid package. I quite like it. This cover art's fantastic. I am 100% also hanging this poster up somewhere in this office at some point. I really liked LA Wars. It's just a really good movie. Is it stellar from beginning to end? Not necessarily. Does it have problems? Absolutely. But just the way that everybody commits to this film, from the cast through to the crew, it just shows so much passion and love, where something like Evil Town is very obviously just a product to be sold. This one feels like someone trying to make a project that means something to them, even if it is just a dumb crime movie with a bunch of fighting and violence. Speaking of which, the violence, top notch. There's some crazy shit in this movie. Check it out. You will not be disappointed.
You're a one-man army, Mr. Quinn.
Just got lucky.
And finally, at number 1, you knew it had to be it because you've narrowed it down by now, the one and only Savage Dawn. Honestly, this one blew my mind because it really shouldn't be a Vinegar Syndrome release. This should be one of those movies that absolutely kicked ass at the box office, became a cultural icon, or at least like a big cult favorite for a lot of people, but like the big cult favorite, like everybody knows about it, but we call it a cult favorite anyway. And, maybe gotten like a sweet laser disc, and then had like a special edition DVD back in the day, and then maybe like another DVD, and then like, I don't know, maybe Shout Factory puts out the latest release, or maybe even it's a studio release. Like, that's the kind of movie we're talking about here. And, well, that's not the case. This thing got ravaged and has not ever seen a proper release until now. It's legitimately a fantastic action flick, and it's just another one of those films from that mid-'80s period that should have turned Lance Henriksen into an A-list star, and just, for whatever reason, didn't. Savage Dawn follows Stryker, to some degree, as a man-with-no-name type ex-soldier riding his motorcycle across America like most ex-soldier loner types are wont to do. He stops by a small Texas town to speak with his friend Tick, played by the always reliable George Kennedy. Of course, it's not all beers and laughs, as a gang of bikers soon set their sights on the town after one of them is arrested by the local sheriff. Admittedly, not the strongest reason to go to war, but here we are. Anyway, as the town prepares for said war, will Stryker help them to persevere? Will George Kennedy do any cool wheelchair stunts? How much of the scenery can William Forsythe chew? Find all that out and more in Savage Dawn. If the words fuck yeah were a movie, they'd be Savage Dawn. As with any film I have aggressive passion for, it won't be for everyone.
I'm your worst nightmare.
For me, it ticks all the right boxes. Needlessly stoic hero? Check. Fistfights? Check. A motherfucking tank? Check. Stellar low-budget production design? Check. A gang of memorable scene-stealing bad guys? Check. Check, 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 and check. Knock off Richard O'Brien? Check. Teched out wheelchair? Check. Karen Black being knuckin' futz? Check. Mostly unnecessary Richard Lynch as a pervy priest subplot? Checkity-doo. Look, guys, I just have really specific needs, all right? That's... You know by now. The point is, if you get a chance, watch Savage Dawn. It is a fantastic action biker town under siege flick. Well worth your time.
But now it's personal, like, between you and me. I'll be seeing you real soon. You know what I mean, boy?
I do believe that this one's sold out by now. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty certain this is sold out. If that's the case, just find a way to watch it. If you have to spend a little extra money on eBay, sure, go ahead. Obviously I never like spending there. If you can buy it from a collector who's willing to part with it, usually they'll give you a better price. Otherwise, I'm sure it's available streaming. Most of these movies are. Check it out. You will not be disappointed. Or maybe you will. Everybody has different taste in movies, and mine is usually frowned upon. So, I don't know. But you won't be disappointed. Just watch it. Just fucking watch it. Go fucking watch it, man. For special features, we get a commentary. It has Vinegar Syndrome's very own Joe Rubin interviewing, moderating the director, Simon Nocturne. It's an interesting discussion of the movie. It's not the best commentary in the world. It's a little dry. There's a point where Simon just gets up and walks away to go find something, which is funny. It's not the best commentary. It does not have the best audio quality, but it is very good. It is generally good, and it's very informative. You get to learn a lot about this classic film. So pretty good commentary overall. I liked it quite a bit. And then beyond that, you also get the theatrical trailer, as usual. Oh, and of course, this is a stellar-looking transfer. They usually are. I would say out of the bunch, LA Wars is definitely the worst transfer, just because it seems like the elements were a little damaged going in. But other than LA Wars, I would say these all are really great transfers. There's nothing really bad about them, and this one just looks beautiful. It's so striking. So yeah, that's number one. Fucking Savage Dawn. I'm gonna set this one down gingerly because I love it. Overall, the VSA lineup is pretty good. It's introduced me to some interesting movies. Those last two are the only ones I'll probably readily revisit. But I would say that everything aside from Vice Academy and Dungeon of Death, I'll definitely rewatch at some point. There's definitely some interesting stuff. Evil Town has a very interesting history behind it. So I'm really looking forward to going back and kind of picking out all the little bits and bobs, because that went through several different shoots. Hell Riders, I'll definitely add to a lineup when I have a party again, when that's possible. And then Savage Harbor is also a bit of a party movie. Do you like avocados? It's a good time. Really solid stuff for Vinegar Syndrome overall. I appreciate that even in the instances where they put out legitimately fucking awful movies like Dungeon of Death, at very least they take the time to give it a proper transfer. That's something that a lot of movies that deserve much better just don't get from the main studios. And that's too bad because, as Vinegar Syndrome has shown, it's not that complicated. Even though they put in a lot of work, they're a small group of guys. If they can do it, big billion-dollar companies can as well. I guess the whole point of this video is, Hollywood, get your fucking act together. Yeah, that's it. I'm terrible at outros, so that's it. Follow me on the Twitters, on the Instagram, I guess. I use that every few years. And on the Fastbooks, if you still use Fastbook. Are we still boycotting Fastbook? It doesn't matter. And, of course, if you would like to give money to my Patreon, I am, of course, always happy to take that. I am going to be starting a few special videos just for my patrons very soon. So if you're a patron and you're watching right now, I got you. I've got a bunch of surprises in order for you. I just need to really get through this month and all the fucking videos that I need to put out. But we're going to be doing a lot more stuff for the patrons. So I'm looking forward to that. And I can't wait to see what else Vinegar Syndrome puts out on their VSA line. And just what they put out. Great stuff. Thanks so much, and until next time, go watch a movie.